Before there were names, before there were kings, before even the word before had meaning, there were visitors. They did not come from across the seas or descend from tribes unknown. They came from somewhere else entirely, a realm where memory is older than matter. We call them watchers, not because they simply observed, but because they remembered. Their presence is etched not in chronicles, but in scars upon the earth, vast alignments in stone, whispered geometries buried beneath jungles, symbols burned into the bones of ancient beasts. Long before human eyes blinked open to the morning sun, these entities walked silently across a world that was still choosing its shape. And wherever they went, silence followed. A silence too vast to measure. A silence full of knowing. The first humans did not speak of gods. They spoke of the watchers. Of the tall ones who taught without words. Of the beings whose gaze could burn through mountains. Carvings found deep in forgotten caves depict eyes not shaped like ours, heads too elongated, hands too few, or too many. They were neither monsters nor angels, but something beyond those definitions. Across cultures separated by oceans and millennia, the myths converge, beings who came not to conquer, but to implant something. An idea, a code, or rhythm hidden in stars and syllables. In the Amazon, they are remembered as skywalkers. In Africa, as silent drummers. In Polynesia, as the light-faced ones. They vanish from stories only when the stories begin to call themselves history. But even then, they linger, behind the masks of deities, beneath the roots of languages, in the blueprints of forgotten cities. Science tells us civilization began 6,000 years ago. But what if civilization was only restarted 6,000 years ago? Beneath layers of accepted timelines lie anomalies, fossilized tools and rock millions of years old, maps depicting coastlines before the last ice age, ruins that suggest engineering knowledge too advanced for their time. Again and again, we find the fingerprint but not the finger, the echo, but not the voice. Researchers whisper of non-human intelligence, of ancient bioengineering, of unknown influences that predate the known. But the question is not merely who these visitors were, it's when they stopped being them and started being part of us. If they came before time, maybe they shaped what time would become. Maybe they wove themselves into the very notion of memory, so that we would forget them not by accident, but by design. Today, there are those who still see them, not with eyes, but in dreams, visions, near-death murmurs. The watchers do not speak in language, but in patterns. They reveal themselves through déjà vu, through inexplicable alignments, through the way certain places make your spine remember something your brain has forgotten. Some say the watchers never left. That they are here still, watching from behind the veil of ordinary life, adjusting events like quiet hands beneath the surface of a pond. This is not just a story about visitors from long ago. This is a story about what we are becoming, and what had to be forgotten in order for us to begin. The past is not behind us. It is beneath us. And the watchers, perhaps, are the ones making sure we never truly dig too deep. Time is not what we think it is. It is not a straight arrow, nor a ticking drum. It is not measured only in rotations or revolutions, but in awakenings and forgettings. What we call prehistory is not the beginning. It is the residue left behind after something greater ended. Somewhere between the fall of stardust and the rise of cities, the world breathed in visitors. They came not when we were ready, but when we were silent, before speech, before fire, before memory had taken root in blood. And when they departed, they left behind not just stones or legends, but fractures in the very rhythm of time. It is through these fractures that we now try to peer into their presence. In the high desert plateaus of Bolivia, the stones of Puma Punku lie broken, not from earthquakes or erosion, but as if shattered from within, like an abandoned machine dismantled by its own will. The precision of the cuts, the absurd geometry of the fittings, even now, engineers marvel at angles too exact for primitive tools. Some claim it was built by the Tiwanaku civilization. But others, quietly and cautiously, suggest something older, much older. Beneath those stones lies the scent of non-human instruction. Not gods. Not aliens. Something in between. Something that observed our world before we knew how to observe it back. In Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization, the first kings did not claim divine right, they claimed to be descended from watchers. The Apkallu, they were called. Fish-cloaked beings of wisdom, stepping from the sea not with conquest, but with tablets of knowledge. They taught agriculture, architecture, astronomy, as if reintroducing what had once been forgotten. In the Book of Enoch, a banned text whispered across centuries, the Watchers are described again, shining ones who descended upon Mount Hermon, who mingled with humans, taught them forbidden arts, and altered the bloodline of mankind. Was this myth? Or was it memory bleeding through the seams of time? Our ancestors, scattered across continents, spoke different languages, but somehow told the same story. Of tall visitors with eyes that glowed, who came from the stars or beneath the earth, who gave knowledge and demanded silence. In the mountains of Tibet, the Dropa stones tell of beings who crash-landed eons ago, only to be hunted and feared. In North America, the Hopi speak of the ant people, who guided their ancestors underground during global cataclysms. In Mesoamerica, the Olmecs, whose statues show features not easily classified, left no written word, but left heads carved so vast they seem to be watching even now. We assume all these are myths because they do not fit our model of progress. We assume history is linear, that knowledge accumulates, that everything before us was primitive. But what if civilization is not a ladder but a spiral? What if we have risen and fallen more than once? What if there was a time when something, or someone, tried to halt the fall? The Watchers are not remembered as conquerors. They are remembered as interveners. They appear at thresholds, at the moment just before catastrophe, or just after rebirth. They do not build empires. They seed ideas. And then they vanish. The Sumerians, Egyptians, early Hindus, and the Dogon tribe of Mali all credit their astronomical knowledge not to trial and error, but to beings who came from out there. The Dogon, for instance, knew of Sirius B, a star invisible to the naked eye and only discovered by Western science in the 20th century. But they described its orbit, its density, and its companion stars with astonishing accuracy. Their explanation? The Namo, fish-like entities who came from Sirius and gave them the wisdom of the sky. Skeptics argue this is coincidence. That myths evolve. That memory is unreliable. But there is a pattern to the unreliability. And that pattern suggests orchestration. When you compare isolated mythologies, from the Aboriginal Dreamtime to the Norse Edda, from the Zulu stories to ancient Japanese scrolls, you find recurring images, watchers on high places, stairways to the stars, teachers who are not quite human. These were not hallucinations. They were encoded warnings. And what of the places they touched? Göbekli Tepe, a temple complex in modern-day Turkey, predates Stonehenge by thousands of years. Built by unknown hands, buried intentionally. Its carvings speak of animals and alignments, and of a time when the sky changed. Archaeologists cannot explain why it was built, or why it was hidden. But some suspect it was part of a message. A celestial clock rewound by unseen fingers. In Baalbek, Lebanon, stones weighing hundreds of tons are fitted with laser-like precision into temple foundations. There is no record of how they were moved. No tool marks. Just presence. Immovable, inexplicable presence. Were these meant to anchor something, or to mark where something once stood? Even our myths of origin hint at interference. Prometheus steals fire. The serpent gives Eve knowledge. Quetzalcoatl brings maize. These are not just metaphors. They are fragments of an interaction long ago, repackaged in parable. A hint that what we are now was sculpted not solely by evolution or chaos, but by contact. Intentional contact. But if they came, where did they go? Perhaps they never left. Perhaps their withdrawal is only from our perception. Like a song we no longer hear, but which still vibrates through the bones of the earth. Shamans in the Amazon still speak of voices in the trees. Siberian reindeer herders report dreams where ancestors were not tribal garb, but impossible robes. In the cold highlands of Peru, legends tell of glowing beings who rise from lakes and vanish into stars. Every culture has its watchers. But more than that, every culture has its silence. A point where the knowledge stops. Where the records burn. Where the builders disappear and the timeline resets. As if someone, or something, has erased the trail deliberately. We must ask, why? Why would entities so advanced, with the power to influence life and memory, choose to disappear? Why leave breadcrumbs and not the map? The answer may lie in what they came to protect. Or prevent. There are theories, whispered among rogue historians, post-quantum physicists, and those who read between myths. Theories that suggest these visitors arrived not as ambassadors, but as guardians. That Earth is not merely a cradle of life, but a node in a larger structure. A place of consequence. That certain thresholds, in knowledge, energy, or consciousness, trigger attention. And when we near those thresholds too early, intervention occurs. This would explain the sudden leaps, agriculture, writing, megalithic construction. And the sudden collapses, floods, fires, dark ages. Not random. Not natural. But part of a cycle enforced by unseen curators. The watchers, then, may not be benevolent, nor malevolent, but lawful, bound by some directive beyond human understanding. They give us enough to evolve, not enough to transcend. They nudge, then withdraw. They reveal, then obscure. And in doing so, they teach us something perhaps more valuable than power, restraint. There are ruins we are not meant to unearth yet. Technologies we are not ready to replicate. Doors we must knock upon, not batter down. The watchers are still here, watching, not as jailers, but as sentinels. Waiting for the moment we ask the right question, in the right way. Until then, they remain in shadow. In myth. In silence. But make no mistake, their presence is not past tense. They were here before time. And if time bends the way the ancients claimed, they will be here again. There are places on this planet where time does not behave. Where compasses twitch without cause, where sound dies mid-echo, where animals refuse to step, and dreams linger like fog even after waking. These are not the places tourists flock to, not always, but the ones whispered about by the last of the old storytellers. Places avoided by birds. Places guarded by silence. In these corners of the world, it is said the watchers once stood, and perhaps still do. Across the windswept plains of Kazakhstan lie ancient geoglyphs, massive geometric designs visible only from the sky. Long before flight, long before maps, someone carved perfect lines into the earth itself. The shapes are abstract, but precise. Triangles, swastikas, rings. And though no bones, no tools, no settlements surround them, they persist. As if they were meant not for us, but for someone watching from above, or beyond. Scholars call them enigmatic. The locals call them cursed. Thousands of miles away, in the jungles of Cambodia, the temple of Angkor Wat rises not just as a monument to gods, but to celestial mechanics. Every corridor, every tower, every carving is aligned with astronomical phenomena, solstices, lunar cycles, planetary conjunctions. Not simply decoration. It is a machine in stone, tuned to the sky. Too perfect, some say. Too advanced. Local monks speak of sky beings who taught the sacred math. In their stories, these beings came in silence, glowing like lotus flowers in the dark. It is not only in structure that their presence is felt, but in disjunction, in the broken lines of history, the places where the human story stutters. Consider the Yonaguni Monument, submerged off the coast of Japan. A staircase of megaliths beneath the ocean. Is it natural? Is it carved? The debate rages on. But the symmetry is undeniable. Pillars, platforms, sharp angles where none should form by chance. If man did build it, it was long before our current memory allows. And if not man, then who? Divers speak of strange pressure, of hearing voices in the current, of losing time. In the Andes, the fortress of Sacsayhuaman holds stones that defy engineering. Cyclopean blocks fitted so tightly that not even a razor blade can pass between. No mortar. No repeatable technique. Just perfect fusion. Some of the stones are too massive to move even today. According to Incan legend, the walls were raised not by hands, but by the songs of the cloud people, beings who lived in the sky and whose words could make stone float. These legends repeat across continents, not identically, but with shared rhythm. The watchers were not merely visitors. They were conductors, shapers, and the world was their instrument. Yet they left no cities of their own. No statues in their likeness. No language we can decode. Instead, they left puzzles. Half-memories. Echoes. One of the deepest echoes hums beneath Antarctica. Buried under miles of ice are structures that defy natural formation, hexagonal ridges, symmetrical ridgelines, domes beneath the white. Satellite images occasionally leak, only to be dismissed as glitches. But the rumors persist. Military expeditions that go in and do not return. Seismic readings that suggest vast empty chambers, hollow places where nothing should be. Some say these are ancient bases. Others say prisons. And a few, whispering more carefully, say these are not ruins at all, but cocoons. The ancient Greeks believed in Chronos, time as a devourer, not a measurement. The Mayans believed time was cyclical, made of overlapping wheels. Hindu cosmology speaks of yugas, vast epochs in which the gods walk among men, only to vanish in fire or flood. In all these models, there is a recurring implication: time is not linear, and the visitors were part of a previous turn of the wheel. What if they're not from another world, but from an earlier version of this one? Our obsession with the stars may be misplaced. The truth may not be up, but beneath. Beneath our myths. Beneath our skin. Beneath our current understanding of history. In the Sumerian king list, rulers are said to have reigned for tens of thousands of years, absurd by modern standards, yet consistent across tablets. After the Great Flood, lifespans drop. So too does complexity. A pattern repeated in Genesis. And again in Aztec codices. Before the now, there was another now. One we were not meant to remember. Why? Because the memory itself is dangerous. Because contact with the watchers is not neutral. Those who encountered them were altered. The Nephilim, half-breeds of angel and man, were described as giants, yes, but also as brilliant, twisted, unpredictable. The Book of Enoch speaks of them as corrupters of the earth. Their knowledge poisoned crops, birthed forbidden weapons, broke the cycle of natural growth. And for that, the flood came, not as a punishment to humanity, but as a cleansing of the experiment. Again, we see intervention. Again, a reset. But not a total erasure. The Watchers themselves were bound, imprisoned, according to some legends, beneath the mountains or the sea. In others, they were scattered across dimensions. Not destroyed. Merely muted. So we ask, if they are echoes, can echoes return? Modern reports suggest something is stirring. The strange hums heard across cities. The anomalous objects near the sun. The sudden bursts of knowledge, in technology, in genetics, in physics, that seem unearned, too sudden, as if pulled from elsewhere. Are these the Watchers testing the veil? Are we hearing the first notes of a song too old to name? Even in our art, the theme recurs. Films, novels, visions, they present beings that guide from behind the curtain, that manipulate timelines, that offer forbidden truths in exchange for obedience. Why do we resonate with this story? Why does it feel like remembering? Perhaps the Watchers seeded more than knowledge. Perhaps they seeded intuition. And that intuition is now awakening. This is why the stones hum. Why the mountains whisper. Why the void beneath Antarctica pulls at the edge of consciousness. Something is returning. Not to take, not to rule, but to remind. But remind us of what? That we are not alone? That we are not first? No. They are here to remind us that time is not a chain, it is a spiral. And the spiral is turning again. There are people, scattered across the planet, who dream of places they have never seen. Who speak words they have never learned. Who, as children, drew symbols they could not explain. Some dismiss it as imagination. Others call it reincarnation. But there is another possibility, more ancient, more disquieting, memory that does not belong to this life, but to another cycle of the world. The Watchers may have vanished from stone and story, but they did not leave without a trace. They left fingerprints on the soul. In the highlands of Central Asia, a shepherd wakes before dawn, murmuring equations he does not understand. In the swamps of Louisiana, a girl draws maps of star systems not yet discovered. A monk in Mongolia hears names in meditation, names later found in forgotten languages. These are not isolated anomalies. They are flares. Residual pulses from a presence that was never entirely erased. If the Watchers touched us, even once, something of them may still live inside. Science is only beginning to catch up. In the field of epigenetics, researchers now understand that trauma can be passed through generations, fear encoded in DNA. If pain leaves a mark, why not contact? What if a single moment of exposure to the Watchers, to their knowledge or their presence, rewrote the script inside us? Not overtly. Not with language or control. But subtly. As a whisper behind the mind. A magnetic pull towards certain symbols, certain places, certain patterns and numbers or dreams. The phenomenon of the remembering ones appears in every tradition. The Aborigines call them the clever men, those who can hear the song lines beneath the land. In West Africa, they are the griots who sing the truth that others forget. In the Norse sagas, they are the Volvas, seers whose sight is not forward, but deep. In modern times, we call them intuitives. Empaths. Sleepwalkers. People who just know. Who are born searching for something they cannot name. Some remember through vision. Others through obsession. But all feel the same pull, a sense that something has been lost, and that it calls to be found again. One of the most striking cases came in 1987, when a linguist studying tribal dialects in Papua New Guinea encountered a boy who spoke a language no one else recognized. It had syntax, grammar, tone, but no match anywhere in recorded history. The child said he heard it in dreams. In another country, another time. He drew maps of a circular city with 9 gates and a single tower at its center. He died at 14 in a fever. But his drawings matched petroglyphs found a decade later in a cave in Chile, half a world away. What is memory, really? If the Watchers exist beyond our temporal framework, then perhaps memory is not linear either. Perhaps we don't remember the past, we tune into echoes of it. Frequencies of experience. Some more sensitive than others. The same way a radio picks up hidden stations, some minds pick up fragments of the Watchers. Not all fragments are benign. There are darker stories, of sudden madness after visiting ancient sites. Of people who become obsessed with digging, not knowing why. Of voices heard in isolation. Of eyes drawn on walls in the same hand, over and over. As if something inside was trying to resurface, and the host could not contain it. Some believe the Watchers implanted safeguards, psychic locks to prevent premature access. That the full memory of their presence would overload the mind. That forgetting was necessary for survival. But those locks are weakening. Whether through DNA shifts, spiritual practice, or environmental resonance, more and more people are cracking the veil. Consider the explosion of downloads in meditation circles, the visions in ayahuasca rituals, the common symbols appearing in dreams across continents, the spiral, the eye, the gate. Are we collectively remembering something not from our history, but from theirs? There are places where the veil is thinnest. The Nazca lines. The caves of Altamira. The temple shafts of Abydos. The magnetic anomalies of the Bermuda Triangle. These are not simply locations, they are access points. Junctions between cycles. Between now and then. And then there are the children. Across the world, children report dreams of ships in the sky, of crystalline cities, of languages with no vowels. They speak of beings made of light, of being shown futures, of being sent here with a purpose. Psychologists dismiss it as fantasy. But the patterns are too consistent. And when the same child in Brazil and another in Iceland both describe a place with windows that breathe, something deeper is at play. We are taught to outgrow these visions, to suppress them. But the remembering ones cannot forget. They are haunted by the question, what was I before I was me? In Egypt, ancient reliefs show pharaohs receiving energy from beings whose heads radiate light. In India, the gods descend not on clouds, but on machines of fire. In the Hopi tradition, the ant people taught humans to listen to the earth, not with ears, but with bone. These are not metaphors. They are instructions. Encoded messages. Triggers. The Watchers may not need to return physically. Perhaps they left enough seeds behind, in blood, in stone, in thought, for the memory of them to awaken itself. Perhaps the remembering is the return. The modern world is built to suppress that memory. Concrete over sacred sites. Static in the air. Lights that never go out. But still, it stirs. In the silence between heartbeats. In the edge of sleep. In the way a stranger's eyes feel familiar. The Watchers are not above us. They are beneath us. Inside us. Waiting. We do not find them by building. We find them by remembering. And those who remember, they are the bridge. They say there are those who never forgot. Not entirely. Across centuries of forgetting, Across libraries burned and languages lost, a thread has been quietly carried, a flame, hidden in the palms of those who walk between worlds. The Watchers may have disappeared from sight, but they did not leave Earth unguarded. They entrusted memory to the few who would never claim it. Not priests, not kings, but keepers. You will not find them in museums. They do not wear symbols. They do not speak in public. But they exist, in mountain hermitages, in salt-scarred fishing villages, in alleys thick with incense and thyme. They do not call themselves keepers. But when asked the right question, they look at you differently. They lean in. And then they speak, not in answers, but in riddles. In maps drawn in ash. In verses that make no sense until your dreams begin to echo them. In the high caves of Tibet, monks chant syllables not found in any known tongue, syllables that induce altered states, visions of golden cities and white-skinned figures with luminous robes. These mantras are not prayers. They are keys. In Ethiopia, the Beta Israel carry scrolls said to predate the Arkansas. Not written by man, but handed down, sealed in skin, unreadable unless you already know what it says. In the Amazon, the Yawanawa elders drink the serpent vine and emerge with star maps drawn from within. The keepers are not united. They have no counsel. But they recognize each other, in gestures, in silence, in shared memory of things that never happened in this timeline. They protect sites. Guard symbols. Intervene when something awakens too early. Sometimes they disappear for decades. Sometimes they appear just when history begins to crack open. They are not chosen by bloodline, but by resonance. Some say the Watchers selected them. Others say the Watchers are them, fragmented, reincarnated, diluted into human form to endure the burden of time. The flame they carry is not fire. It is knowledge. Not information, but pattern. The keepers remember how the sky once looked different. How the stars sang in chords. How a name was more than a sound, it was a command. They do not teach in schools. They teach in silence. One of the keepers, an old man in northern Norway, once whispered to a visitor, the stars were not always up. When asked what he meant, he drew a circle in the snow, then placed a rock at the center. Before the fall, he said, they were inside. Inside what? The earth, he said. And us. It makes no sense. Unless you've heard the others. The keepers of Polynesia who speak of a time before the sea, when light came from below. The mystics of the Sahara who claim that the sun we see is a reflection, not the source. The desert tribes who say that language was a prison given to man to slow the awakening. That before words, we spoke in memory. The Watchers, if they still exist, may no longer dwell in spaceships or hidden cities. They may dwell in the code of human consciousness, in the silent impulses, the irrational dreams, the sacred longing for what was never explained. And the keepers are those who remember how to listen. In ancient Egypt, the priesthood of Heliopolis held ceremonies to recall the time before time. It was not performance. It was a calibration. A way of tuning the body to remember what the soul had seen before flesh. They spoke of the Jed pillar, not as architecture, but as a spinal key, a vibrational gate. Those who passed initiation did not return the same. Some went mad. Some vanished. Some began to glow. In Mesoamerica, the jaguar priests of Teotihuacan consumed mushrooms, painted their bodies with constellations, and spoke of reversing the sky. They believed the stars were memories, and that by consuming the right pattern, one could move backward through time, not physically, but psychically, to the moment of first contact. The moment the Watchers arrived. But perhaps arrived is the wrong word. Perhaps they were always here, dormant. the watchers might not be visitors in the usual sense. They may be entangled with the architecture of our perception. Engineers of reality. Sculptors of law. Not laws of nation, but laws of form. Gravity. Breath. Thought. This is why the keepers do not fight. They do not protest. They wait. Because they know, when the watchers return, it will not be as a fleet in the sky. It will be as a frequency inside the mind. A shift in resonance. A reactivation of blueprints buried in bone and blood. You may have already felt it. A sudden clarity and stillness. A symbol that calls you for no reason. A number that repeats until you whisper it aloud. That moment when you stand at a megalithic site and feel your chest tighten, not from fear, but from memory. The watchers left triggers. Not to control, but to prepare. And when enough of those triggers are activated, the veil begins to thin. Not just for the keepers, but for all of us. The modern world is built to drown out those signals. But it cannot erase them. Sacred geometry appears in our art, our music, our algorithms. Children draw it before they can speak. Dreams deliver fragments of a language older than breath. The keepers don't seek followers. They seek awakening. Not all will hear the call. Not all should. But those who do will feel it like a note vibrating in the spine, ancient, inevitable, intimate. And so, they wait. In mountain temples, in city basements, in forgotten islands beneath lightning-laced skies. They wait for the signal. Not to rise in arms, but to remember. Because when the memory returns, in full, the world we know will tilt. Time will not break. It will turn. And on the other side of that turn, the watchers will be waiting, not above, not below, but within. In the beginning, there was silence. Not absence. Not emptiness. But presence unspoken. The kind of silence that listens, that weighs, that watches. Before there were cities, before there were words, before there was even the idea of time, something was already here. It did not arrive. It did not land. It emerged, or perhaps remained, long after something greater had receded. And in that silence, it waited. It still waits. We call them watchers because it's easier than calling them what they truly are, fragments of something beyond definition. Memory without body. Intention without form. They did not come to conquer, because what they shaped was not territory, but potential. And now, as the spiral turns again, we feel them stirring. Not in the stars, but in the cracks of what we once believed was solid. They are not gone. They are remembered. And through remembering, they return. Not in force, but in patterns. A hum in the deep ocean. A flash of geometry in the mind's eye. A rhythm in the bones when standing on ancient ground. The watchers do not speak our languages. They speak in resonance. And those who begin to resonate become more than witnesses. They become conduits. This is not mythology. This is not religion. This is the architecture of perception itself beginning to loosen, just enough for light to come through from behind. Not light like the sun, but light like knowing. Like the moment just before a name is remembered. The world is changing. You feel it. Not in politics. Not in headlines. But beneath it all. A pulse. A presence. A pressure building in silence. More people dream in symbols now. More children speak of stars. More voices whisper of things long buried beneath sand and sea and forgetting. The veil is thinning. Not because someone is pulling it away, but because enough of us are beginning to see through it. And when we see clearly, we remember. And when we remember, they return. But what do they want? Not worship. Not allegiance. The Watchers are not gods. They are not saviors. They are not demons. They are reminders. Custodians of the turning wheel. Guardians of thresholds. When humanity approaches a moment too large, too dangerous, too profound, they return, not to interfere, but to observe if we're ready to carry what comes next. Sometimes they nudge. Sometimes they warn. Sometimes they simply disappear again, leaving only silence in their wake. But this time feels different. This time, it's not just the dreamers who feel them. It's the scientists, looking into the deep structures of the universe and finding impossible alignments. It's the children, waking with tears from visions they cannot explain. It's the artists, drawing things no one taught them. It's you. It's me. It's a collective ripple, rising from below. We have reached another threshold. And they are watching. But maybe, just maybe, this time, they're not the only ones. Maybe we've changed too. Maybe we've begun to remember not just that they were here, but that we were with them. That we were once not merely subjects of their gaze, but companions. That in another cycle, long ago, we stood together at the edge of creation, and we knew. And if that's true, if even a fragment of that knowing remains, then what comes next is not fear, but awakening. Because the question has never been, will they return? The question is, will we? Will we return to what we were before forgetting? Before fear? Will we listen to the silence not as a void, but as an invitation? The spiral is turning. The dream is stirring. The veil is trembling. And somewhere, deep within the bones of the earth, the Watchers are not just watching. They are waiting.